I hadn't spoken to my family in 8 years, not since they branded me a failure, the oddball daughter who'd never amount to anything. Then, out of nowhere, a fancy wedding invitation from my sister Jessica landed in my mailbox. My stomach churned, but I decided to face the lion's den, her extravagant wedding in Napa Valley. They thought I was still the old Brittany scraping by with useless YouTube videos destined for nothing. What they didn't know was how much I'd changed, what I'd built, and who I'd married. At that wedding, my parents mocked me in front of hundreds of guests, laughing at my dreams until my husband walked in and the entire room went dead silent. Want to know how my family went from sneering to speechless? Drop a comment with your own family, drama, hit that like button, and subscribe to catch every twist of this story. I'm Brittany, 35 years old, and the story of why I cut off my family starts long before that wedding invitation showed up. Growing up in the Larson family was like living under a microscope. Every move, judged, every choice weighed against the family's golden standard. We lived in a sprawling mansion in Orange County, California, the kind of place that screamed old money and older expectations. My father, Matthew, ran Larson Enterprises, a real estate empire that bought and sold half the West Coast. Success meant following his playbook, study business, join the company, marry someone who'd boost the family name. I never fit that mold, never wanted to. My mother died when I was 9, leaving a hole nothing could fill. She was warm, creative, always encouraging me to dream big. After she was gone, Matthew remarried within a year. Enter Linda, my stepmother, a polished socialite, 15 years his junior, obsessed with status and appearances. Linda brought her own baggage, a sharp tongue, and a best friend, Sarah Mitchell, who hung around our house like she owned it. Both saw me as a problem from day one, too dreamy, too different, always scribbling ideas for videos instead of crunching numbers. By the time I was a teenager, I was obsessed with creating content. I'd sneak into my room with a cheap camcorder, filming skits about sustainable living, my passion even then. Linda called it childish nonsense. Sarah was worse. She'd smirk and say, "Brittany, you're wasting your life on those silly videos." My father didn't bother defending me. He'd just shake his head and mutter about how I'd never survive in the real world. The only person who got me was my little sister Jessica, 7 years younger. She'd sneak into my room to watch my videos, giggling at my goofy intros. "You're gonna be famous, Brit," she'd whisper, her eyes wide. But the Larson family had no room for dreamers. Every dinner was a lecture, Matthew droning on about real estate deals, Linda gushing over her charity galas, Sarah chiming in with snide remarks about my hobby. My cousin Robert, Uncle Charles's son, was the golden boy, already interning at the company by 18, flashing his smug grin whenever I mentioned my videos. Uncle Charles, who took over family decisions when Matthew was too busy, made it clear, "Brittany, you're a Larson. Act like one." Even my little cousin Avery, only 7 back then, noticed the tension. She'd tug my sleeve and ask why everyone was so mean to me. When I was 17, I announced I wanted to study digital media in college, not business, not law, nothing respectable. The dining room went silent. Matthew slammed his fork down. "You think you can throw away your future for some internet fad?" he barked. Linda's lips curled into that fake smile she always used before a jab. "It's not practical. Dear, maybe try something useful like marketing." Sarah, sipping her wine, added, "She'll be begging for a job in a year." I looked to Jessica, hoping for backup, but she was too young to speak up, her eyes fixed on her plate. College was my breaking point. I got into a decent school in Los Angeles, planning to study media production. Matthew agreed to pay tuition, but only if I minored in business. I refused. "I'm not wasting my life on something I hate," I told him, my voice shaking. His face turned red. "Then you're on your own," he snapped. Linda didn't even look up from her phone. That night, I overheard her telling Sarah, "She's just like her mother, delusional and weak." The next day, Matthew cut me off. No tuition, no allowance. Nothing. I was 19 alone with a few $1,000s saved from summer jobs. I moved to a cramped apartment in Los Angeles, worked 2 jobs waitressing and freelance editing to pay for school. I started my YouTube channel Green Vibes with Brit, posting videos about eco-friendly living. It was slow going, 50 views here, 100 there, but it felt right. Jessica would call sometimes, sneaking away from Linda to chat. "I miss you," she'd say, her voice small. "They're so hard on you." I'd tell her to hang in there, promising we'd stay close. But as she got older, caught up in the family's world of private schools and debutante balls, our calls grew rare. The family reached out a few times, stiff emails from Matthew, a birthday card from Uncle Charles, but it was clear they wanted me to come crawling back ready to join the company. I didn't. My channel started gaining traction, 10,000 subscribers, then 50,000. I met Ethan Carter, a brilliant guy working on renewable energy startups. He saw my videos, loved my passion, and we clicked instantly. When we got married 3 years ago, I didn't invite the family. Jessica sent a sweet note and a small gift, a journal for my ideas, but no one else cared. They thought I was a nobody scraping by in a world they didn't understand. 8 years passed without a real conversation. I built a life I loved. My channel hit 1 million subscribers, Ethan's company took off, and we were happy. But part of me still carried the weight of their words. Failure, delusional, weak. Then last month, that wedding invitation arrived. Jessica was getting married to a tech heir in Napa Valley, and she wanted me there. "Please, Brit." Her handwritten note read, "It won't be the same without you." I stared at it for days, my heart racing. Ethan found me pacing our living room. "What do you want to do?" he asked, his voice steady. I didn't know. Part of me wanted to see Jessica. Part of me dreaded facing the family that had written me off. But I knew one thing: if I went, it wouldn't be for their approval. The drive to Napa Valley felt like heading into a battlefield. I'd spent days agonizing over Jessica's wedding invitation, but Ethan's calm voice kept me grounded. "You're doing this for Jess, not them." I chose a simple emerald green dress, one I'd designed myself for my Green Vibes brand, paired with low heels I could escape in if things got ugly. Ethan couldn't come until the reception work kept him in Los Angeles, but he promised to be there when I needed him most. As I pulled into the resort, a sprawling estate draped in fairy lights and roses, my heart pounded. 8 years since I'd seen my family, and I was walking back into their world. The venue screamed Larson, money marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a vineyard backdrop that probably cost more than my first apartment. Guests in designer suits and gowns mingled under a massive tent, their laughter mixing with a string quartet's soft notes. I handed my invitation to the coordinator, a brisk woman with a clipboard. "Brittany Larson," I said, bracing myself. Her eyes flicked over me, lingering on my dress, no designer label, just my own work. "Larson? Right. You're with the secondary tables," she replied, her tone clipped, pointing me to a check-in table near the back. I scanned the crowd, spotting familiar faces, distant aunts, family friends, none bothering to acknowledge me. Then I saw Linda, my stepmother, holding court near a champagne tower. At 50, she looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, blonde hair pinned up, diamonds glittering on her neck, her red gown screaming wealth. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a split second I saw surprise, then something colder, disdain. She excused herself from her group and glided over her heels, clicking. "Brittany," she said, air-kissing my cheek. Her perfume overwhelming. "I didn't think you'd show," Jessica insisted, of course. "I wouldn't miss my sister's wedding," I replied, keeping my voice even. Linda's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, you look healthy," she said, her gaze raking over my dress, searching for something to criticize. "Still doing those little videos, I assume?" Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut in. "Brittany Larson, as I live and breathe." Sarah Mitchell. Linda's best friend sauntered up, her black dress tight, and her smirk sharper than ever. "What's it been, 8 years, still playing with your camera?" "They're not play," I said, forcing a smile. My channel's doing well over 1 million subscribers now. Sarah's laugh was sharp like glass breaking. Oh, honey, subscribers don't pay the bills. You should have listened to Matthew and joined the company. Linda nodded, sipping her champagne. Some people just don't know their place, she murmured loud enough for me to hear. I bit my tongue, reminding myself why I was here for Jessica, not to fight old battles. I moved toward the ceremony area, hoping to find my sister. The coordinator waved me off. The bride's busy with family photos. Of course I wasn't included in those. I found my seat in the back row next to a couple of strangers who barely glanced my way. Whispers floated around me. Is that Matthew's daughter? The one who ran off to be a vlogger or something? I stared straight ahead, clutching my purse, trying to block them out. Then Jessica appeared, radiant in her ivory gown, her blonde hair swept up under a veil. She was walking with Uncle Charles, who was giving her away in Matthew's place. Our eyes met as she passed, and she flashed a quick, warm smile, the same one she'd given me as a kid watching my videos. It was enough to steady me. The ceremony was beautiful, all soft vows and white petals falling like snow. I blinked back tears as Jessica and her groom, a tech heir named Ryan, kissed. Whatever happened today, I was glad I'd come for her. After the vows, guests spilled into the cocktail hour, servers weaving through with trays of shrimp and Prosecco. I grabbed a glass, hoping to blend in, but Linda and Sarah weren't done. They cornered me near a floral arch, their smiles predatory. Brittany, you must tell us about your career, Linda said, her voice dripping with fake interest. What's it like living off internet clicks? Sarah leaned in, her eyes gleaming. I saw one of your videos, something about composting. Honestly, who watches that? People who care about the planet, I said, my jaw tight. My audience is global now, and brands pay well to work with me. Sarah snorted. Brands like what? Thrift stores? Linda laughed, touching Sarah's arm like they'd just shared the best joke. I felt my cheeks burn, but I wasn't 19 anymore. I wouldn't let them rattle me. Excuse me, I said, stepping away, but Sarah's voice followed. She's so sensitive, just like her mother. I found a quiet corner and texted Ethan. Surviving barely. Linda and Sarah are relentless. His reply came fast. Hang in there, I'm wrapping up and heading your way. Knowing he'd be here soon kept me going. I sipped my Prosecco, watching the crowd, when my cousin Robert swaggered over, a whiskey in hand. At 37, he was heavier now, his suit straining at the buttons, but that smug grin hadn't changed. Cousin Brittany, he drawled, still chasing internet fame. Or, have you finally gotten a real job? My channel is my job, I said, keeping my tone calm. It pays better than you'd think. He raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. Right, and I bet you're living in a penthouse, huh? Keep dreaming. He wandered off, chuckling, leaving me seething. I was about to head for the restroom when a small voice stopped me. Brittany. It was Avery, my 15-year-old cousin, her dark hair in braids, looking nervous in her pastel dress. I watch your videos, she whispered. They're so cool. I want to make content too, but Mom says it's a waste of time. My heart softened. It's not a waste. If you love it, I told her. Send me your ideas, I'd love to see them. Her face lit up, but before she could say more, Linda called her away, shooting me a glare. I sighed, feeling like I was back in that old mansion, always the outsider. The reception was starting, and I found my table, predictably the farthest from the head table, stuck with random cousins and an elderly couple who didn't know me. The ballroom was a vision: ice sculptures, gold-rimmed plates, a chandelier that probably cost more than my car. I watched Jessica glide in with Ryan, her smile bright but strained, like she was carrying the weight of the family's expectations. I wanted to talk to her, but Linda and Matthew were hovering, directing her every move. As dinner was served, Sarah's voice rang out from a nearby table, loud enough to turn heads. Remember when Brittany thought she'd be the next big YouTube star? She said, her tone mocking. She'd lock herself in her room with that cheap camera acting like she was Oprah. A few guests laughed, glancing my way. Linda joined in, her voice carrying. Such a shame, she had every opportunity, but some people choose to throw it all away. I stared at my plate, my fork frozen, feeling every eye on me. Sarah wasn't done. She stood glass in hand, ready to make a spectacle. Let's raise a toast. She called, her smirk widening, to Brittany Larson, the family dreamer who's still chasing fairy tales. Laughter rippled through the ballroom, sharp, cruel, aimed right at me. I stood frozen by my table, my hands gripping the back of a chair, feeling every pair of eyes in the room. Linda's chuckle joined the chorus, her diamond earrings glinting as she leaned toward Sarah, whispering something that made them both laugh harder. My chest tightened, the old wounds from 8 years ago, splitting open, failure, delusional, weak. Before I could move, a deep voice cut through the noise. I'd like to add to that toast, my father, Matthew Larson, boomed from the head table. He stood, his tailored tuxedo crisp, his silver hair catching the chandelier light. The room quieted, guests turning to the patriarch of Larson Enterprises, expecting some heartfelt speech about Jessica's wedding. Instead, his eyes locked onto me, cold and unforgiving. To my daughter Brittany, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm, who thought she could outrun her responsibilities with a camera and some internet pipe dreams. The laughter grew louder, bolder. I felt my face burn, my pulse hammering in my ears. Matthew raised a hand, signaling to a technician at the back. Let's take a trip down memory lane. He continued, a smirk tugging at his lips. A massive screen behind the head table flickered to life, and there I was, 17 years old, awkward in a baggy hoodie, sitting in my childhood bedroom. The video was one of my first, a shaky clip where I rambled about wanting to be a YouTuber, my voice full of naive hope. I'm gonna make videos that change the world. Teenage me declared, waving at the camera. Sustainability, creativity, that's my future. The room erupted. Guests howled, some clapping like it was a comedy show. Sarah doubled over her wine glass, nearly spilling. Oh my God, she's serious, she gasped loud enough for everyone to hear. Linda's laugh was high-pitched, almost manic. Look at her, thinking she's the next Oprah, she said, shaking her head. My cousin Robert slouched at his table, snorted so hard his drink sloshed. Even Uncle Charles, usually stoic, cracked a rare smile, his eyes flicking to me with pity, or was it contempt? I wanted to disappear, to sink through the marble floor and never resurface. That video was a piece of my heart, a dream I'd poured everything into when I had nothing else. Now it was a punchline weaponized by my own father. I glanced at Jessica, hoping for a lifeline. She was frozen at the head table, her face pale, her hands twisting her napkin. Ryan, her groom, whispered something to her, but she didn't move, trapped under the weight of the family's gaze. Brittany, Matthew went on, his voice carrying over the laughter. You had every advantage. Private schools, connections, a legacy. And you chose this. He gestured to the screen where teenage me was still babbling about changing the world. A life of make-believe, leeching off clicks and likes. You're a disappointment to this family. The word disappointment hit like a slap, echoing in the now hushed room. The laughter faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. Guests shifted in their seats, sensing the line between mockery and cruelty had been crossed. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. My throat was tight, my vision blurring. I was 19 again, standing in Matthew's office, hearing him tell me I'd never survive without his money. Linda stood now, placing a hand on Matthew's arm, her smile sharp. Let's not dwell on it, Matthew, she said loud enough for the room to hear. She's lucky we even invited her. Sarah nodded, raising her glass again. To Brittany, the dreamer who never woke up. Another wave of chuckles followed, but it was thinner, less certain. I was seconds from bolting when the ballroom doors swung open. Ethan Carter, my husband, strode in, his charcoal suit tailored to perfection, his dark hair neat despite the rush from Los Angeles. He moved with that quiet confidence that always steadied me, his eyes finding mine across the room. The crowd parted slightly, heads turning to this newcomer who didn't belong in their world, or so they thought. Ethan's warm smile was like oxygen pulling me back from the edge. He reached me in seconds, his hand brushing mine, grounding me. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice calm but carrying. Traffic was brutal. The room was still the air thick with curiosity. Matthew's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing. "And who are you?" he demanded, his tone sharp. Ethan turned to him, unfazed. "Ethan Carter, Brittany's husband," he replied, offering a hand. Matthew didn't take. "I've heard a lot about you, Matthew." Linda's eyebrows shot up, her gaze darting between us, reassessing. Sarah's smirk vanished, her glass lowering slightly. Ethan glanced at the screen where my teenage self was frozen mid-sentence. "Nice touch," he said to Matthew, his voice cool. "Showing a kid's dream to humiliate her, real classy." A few guests gasped, others murmured. Matthew's face reddened, but before he could respond, Ethan turned to me, his eyes softening. "You okay, Britt?" I nodded barely, my voice gone. He squeezed my hand, then faced the room, his presence commanding without effort. "Let's set the record straight," Ethan said, his voice clear, cutting through the tension. "That pipe dream you're laughing at, Brittany's YouTube channel Green Vibes with Brit, has over 2 million subscribers. Her videos on sustainable living reach millions. Global brands like Patagonia and Tesla pay 6 figures to work with her." The murmurs grew louder, guests exchanging stunned looks. Linda's smile froze, her champagne glass trembling. Sarah's jaw dropped, her eyes wide. "And me," Ethan continued, his tone steady. "I run Carter Energy, a renewable energy company. We just signed a $20 million contract with the state of California to build solar farms. Brittany's my partner in every sense. She's the creative force behind our mission to make the world greener." The room was silent now, the kind of silence that swallows everything. Robert's glass hit the table with a clink. Uncle Charles's smile was gone, his face unreadable. Jessica stood suddenly, her chair scraping the floor. "Enough?" she said, her voice shaking but firm. She stepped away from the head table, her gown rustling, and crossed the room to me. "Britt's not a disappointment," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's the only one in this family who ever believed in me, who told me I could be more than a Larson trophy." She turned to Matthew, her eyes blazing. "You're wrong about her, always have been." The crowd was frozen, every eye on us. Matthew's face was purple, his fists clenched. Linda touched his arm, whispering, "Matthew, calm down," but he shook her off. Sarah sank into her chair, her face pale, realizing she'd picked the wrong target. Jessica grabbed my other hand, standing beside me, her grip fierce. Ethan's arm brushed mine, his presence a shield. For the first time that night, I felt like I wasn't alone. I looked at Matthew, then Linda, then Sarah, their smugness crumbling. The screen behind them still showed teenage me dreaming big. That girl wasn't a joke, she was the start of everything I'd built. I straightened, finding my voice. "You'll regret this," I said quietly, my words carrying in the silence. Sarah let out a weak laugh, but it died fast. Matthew's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, the weight of Ethan's words and Jessica's defiance pinning him in place. The room held its breath, waiting for what came next. Linda recovered first, her socialite instincts kicking in. She stepped forward, her red gown swishing, and flashed a brittle smile. "Brittany, darling," she said, her voice syrupy, "why didn't you tell us about your success? 2 million subscribers, that's incredible." She reached out like she might hug me, but I stepped back. My expression cold. "Would it have mattered?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline pumping through me. Linda's smile faltered, her hand hovering awkwardly in the air. Sarah jumped in, desperate to save face. "We're so proud of you, Brittany," she said, her tone forced. "I mean, who knew you were working with Tesla? That's huge." I looked at her, then at Linda, their sudden flattery as hollow as their earlier insults. "You didn't care when I was starting out," I said, keeping my gaze level. "You called my dreams childish, a waste of time. Now you're proud." Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came out. Linda's eyes narrowed, but she stayed silent, her charm offensive failing under the weight of her own hypocrisy. The crowd watched, some whispering, others openly staring, the drama unfolding like a live show they couldn't turn away from. Matthew cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "This is all very impressive," he said, his voice tight, as if the words physically hurt him. "But let's not make a scene at Jessica's wedding." He shot me a look, the same one he'd used when I was 19, daring me to fall in line. I met his gaze, unflinching. "You started this scene, Dad?" I said the word dad sharp, a reminder of the father who'd cut me off without a second thought. "You wanted to humiliate me. Don't act surprised when it backfires." A murmur rippled through the room, guests shifting uncomfortably. Uncle Charles stood, his face stern, ready to play patriarch. "Brittany, enough," he barked. "This is a celebration, not a place to air grievances." Before I could respond, Jessica cut in, her voice fierce. "No, Uncle Charles. She's right," she said, stepping closer to me. "You all treated Britt like she was nothing, but she's built more than any of us could have imagined. I'm ashamed I didn't stand up for her sooner." She turned to me, her eyes glistening. "I'm sorry, Britt, I should have fought for you years ago." Her words hit me like a wave, warm and overwhelming. I squeezed her hand, my throat tight. "You're here now, Jess," I whispered, and she nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. Ryan, her groom, stood beside her, his expression supportive, clearly impressed by her courage. The room was quiet again, the family's power unraveling before everyone's eyes. Avery, my 15-year-old cousin, slipped through the crowd, her braids bouncing, her eyes wide with awe. "Brittany," she said softly, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "Is it true? 2 million subscribers? And you work with Patagonia?" I smiled, the first real smile of the night. "It's true," I said. "And you can do it too. Avery, don't let anyone tell you your dreams are a waste." Her face lit up, and she nodded, glancing nervously at her father, Robert, who was watching with a scowl. "I want to make videos like you," she whispered. "Can I send you some?" I nodded, touching her shoulder. "Anytime, let's make it happen." Linda, sensing the moment slipping away, tried again. "Brittany, Ethan, why don't you join us at the head table?" she said, her voice overly bright. "There's plenty of room, and we'd love to hear more about your ventures." Ethan raised an eyebrow, his smile polite but cutting. "Thanks, Linda, but we're good here," he said, his arm brushing mine. "Brittany doesn't need a better seat to prove her worth." Linda's face flushed, her charm crumbling. Sarah mumbled something about needing a refill and slunk off, her confidence gone. Jessica turned to the crowd, her voice steady now. "I want everyone to know, Brittany's not just my sister, she's my hero," she said, her words ringing clear. "She followed her heart when we all told her she'd fail, and she proved us wrong. I'm so proud of her." A few guests clapped, hesitant at first, then louder, the sound building into something real. Matthew's jaw clenched, his eyes dark, but he stayed silent, his authority undercut by his own daughter. Uncle Charles sat down, his face unreadable, clearly outmaneuvered. I looked at Ethan, his steady gaze giving me strength. "Ready to go?" he asked quietly, sensing I'd had enough. I nodded, then turned to Jessica. "I'm so happy for you, Jess," I said, hugging her tightly. "Don't let them clip your wings, okay?" She hugged me back, her voice muffled. "I won't, Britt, I promise we'll stay close." I pulled back, smiling at Ryan, who gave me a respectful nod. "Take care of her," I told him, and he grinned. "Always." Before leaving, I crouched down to Avery. "Here," I said, slipping a small notebook from my purse, a mini version of the one Jessica had sent me years ago. "Write your ideas in this, and send me your first video deal." Her eyes sparkled, and she hugged me, quick and fierce. "Deal," she whispered. I stood, taking Ethan's hand, and we started toward the exit. The crowd parted, some guests nodding, others avoiding my gaze, the weight of the night settling over them. Matthew stepped forward, his expression stiff. "Brittany," he said, his voice low. "We should talk, maybe lunch tomorrow." Larson Enterprises could use someone with your influence. Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. She doesn't need your company, Matthew. He said, his tone firm. Brittany's built her own empire. You're welcome to watch her videos, though. I bit back a smile as Matthew's face darkened his offer. Rejected in front of his peers. As we reached the doors, Linda called out, her voice desperate. Brittany, don't be rash. We're family. I paused, turning just enough to meet her eyes. Family doesn't humiliate each other. Linda, I said, my voice calm but final. You made your choice 8 years ago. I've made mine. With that, we walked out, the cool Napa Valley air hitting my face like freedom. Ethan squeezed my hand, his smile proud. You were incredible, Britt, he said, and I leaned into him, the weight of the night lifting. Whatever came next, I knew I'd faced my demons and won. We didn't look back as we left the Larson family's glittering world behind, their stunned faces fading into the distance. The drive back to Los Angeles was quiet, not the heavy kind, but the kind where you're both processing something big. Ethan glanced at me, his smile soft. You did it, Britt, he said, his voice warm. You faced them and came out stronger. I leaned my head against the window, the highway lights blurring past, and for the first time in years I felt light, like I'd finally let go of their judgment. Back in our loft in Los Angeles, life slipped back into its rhythm. Our place was nothing like the Larson mansion. No marble floors or chandeliers, just high ceilings, sunlit windows, and a cluttered desk where I edited my green vibes with Brit videos. I loved it, every mismatched chair, every plant I'd nursed back to life. The next morning, I woke to a text from Avery, my 15-year-old cousin. Brittany, thank you for what you said, it read. I started filming my first video last night. It's about upcycling clothes. Can I send it to you? Attached was a blurry photo of her holding a thrifted jacket, her grin wide. My heart swelled. I texted back, can't wait to see it, keep shining, Avery. Knowing I'd sparked something in her made the whole ordeal worth it. Jessica called that afternoon, her voice hesitant but warm. Britt. I can't stop thinking about the wedding, she said, the words rushing out. I'm so sorry for everything, for not standing up sooner, for letting them treat you like that. I sat on our couch, sunlight streaming in, and listened as she poured her heart out. You're my sister, and I want us to be real again, not just holiday cards or awkward texts. I smiled, my eyes stinging. I'd love that, Jess, I said. Let's start fresh, you and me. She laughed, a little shaky, and we made plans to meet up soon, maybe in San Francisco, away from the family's shadow. True to her word, Jessica kept in touch. She sent photos from her honeymoon in Hawaii, funny memes about wedding planning, even a video of her trying to compost in her new apartment, clearly inspired by my channel. It wasn't perfect. The years apart left gaps we'd need time to fill, but it was a start. Ryan, her husband, joined one of our video calls, his easy grin making me like him more. Britt, Jess talks about you all the time, he said. You're the cool sister who's saving the planet. I laughed, feeling a warmth I hadn't known with family in years. The rest of the Larsons. Not so much. A week after the wedding, Linda sent an email, formal, like she was addressing a business associate. Dear Brittany, it began. Your accomplishments are truly remarkable. We'd love to have you and Ethan over for brunch to discuss potential collaborations. I rolled my eyes, showing it to Ethan. Collaborations, he said, snorting. She means she wants a piece of your clout. I didn't reply. Linda's brunch invite went straight to the trash, along with a tacky gift basket she sent, probably repurposed from one of her galas. Matthew was next, leaving a voicemail that was more command than apology. Brittany, it's your father, he said, his voice gruff. What happened at the wedding was regrettable. Larson Enterprises could benefit from your platform. Call me to discuss. I played it for Ethan, who shook his head. He's not sorry, he's just sniffing out a deal, he said. I nodded, deleting the message. Matthew had made his choice when he cut me off at 19. I didn't owe him a second chance. Sarah Mitchell, of all people, tried her luck too. She slid into my Instagram DMs with a long, rambling message. "Brittany, I misjudged you," she wrote. "Your videos are so inspiring. Let's grab coffee, I'm in LA next month." I left her on read. Sarah's fake tears didn't erase the years she'd spent tearing me down beside Linda. Robert and Uncle Charles stayed silent, probably too proud or too embarrassed to reach out. I was fine with that. Their absence was louder than any apology could have been. A month later, I was prepping for a new Green Vibes video when Avery's first video arrived in my inbox. It was rough, shaky camera, uneven audio, but her passion shone through as she showed how to turn old jeans into a tote bag. I sent her feedback encouraging her to keep going and shared her video on my Instagram story, tagging her with a heart emoji. Her reply was a string of excited emojis and a "Thank you, Brittany, that kid was going places," and I'd be damned if her family crushed her dreams like they'd tried with mine. Ethan found me in our home office one evening, staring at my laptop, a half-edited video paused on the screen. "You've been quiet," he said, leaning against the doorframe, his dark eyes searching mine. "Still thinking about the wedding," I nodded, closing the laptop. "It's weird," I admitted. "All those years I worked so hard to prove them wrong. 2 million subscribers, brand deals, our life. But when I finally got their attention, it didn't feel like I thought it would." Ethan sat beside me, his hand on mine. "That's because their approval was never the point," he said. "You built this for you, not them." He was right. The wedding had been a reckoning, not a victory lap. Standing up to Matthew, Linda, and Sarah hadn't filled some void from my childhood. It had shown me I didn't need their validation to begin with. I thought back to that teenage girl in the video they'd mocked, the one who dreamed of changing the world. She wasn't a failure, she was the foundation of everything I'd become. My channel, my marriage, my mission, they were mine, built on my terms, not theirs. I started pouring that clarity into my work. My next video about finding purpose through passion hit 3 million views in a week. Comments poured in, people sharing how they'd defied their own families, chased dreams others called foolish. One comment from a girl named Mia stuck with me. "Your story gave me the courage to start my own channel. Thank you, Britt." I pinned it, smiling, knowing that was the real win, lighting a spark in someone else, just like I had with Avery. Jessica visited us in Los Angeles a few months later, her laughter filling our loft as we cooked a messy vegan dinner together. She'd started therapy, she told me, to untangle herself from the Larson expectations. "Seeing you stand up to Dad, it changed me," she said, her eyes serious. "I want to live like that, Brit, free." I hugged her, proud of the woman she was becoming. We promised to keep building our bond no matter what the family thought. As for the Larsons, I let them fade. I didn't hate them, not Matthew, not Linda, not Sarah. Hate would have meant they still had power over me. Instead, I chose indifference, focusing on the life I loved. My channel grew, Ethan's company thrived, and we planned a trip to Costa Rica to volunteer with a conservation group, a dream we'd shared since we met. The notebook Avery sent me, filled with her video ideas, sat on my desk, a reminder of what mattered, inspiring others to be true to themselves. If you've ever had to stand up to family who tried to define your worth, you know how hard it is to break free. It takes guts to choose your own path when everyone's telling you you'll fail. But here's what I learned. Your value isn't in their applause. It's in the life you build, the people you lift up, the dreams you chase. So tell me your story. How did you find the courage to live your truth? Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more real talk. Thanks for listening to mine, and here's to writing your own ending.